Hello folks, presentation number 2, Sustainable Materials Management Principles and Life and Work Styles. The first part of this presentation will be about the 10 principles. You should know these, live them, love them, practice them. And these 10 principles are, and I'll go through every single one of them, but they're total participation, holistic thinking, design for cradle to cradle, creative rethinking, eliminate and avoid toxicity, prevention and precaution, implement the 3 R's, continuous improvement, the triple bottom line, and continuing education and training. All of them are important, absolutely important, and they're like our gospel, okay? So we'll go on. Why are these 10 principles important? Well, they help us change from the linear to the nonlinear economy, from the take, make, and discard, consume it and dispose it in the landfill, to a nonlinear approach, which is more cyclical, in which we apply this to our life and work styles, and after we manufacture it, we consume it, we separate it, we collect it, we sort it, we process it, market it, and put it back into manufacturing. We try to emulate natural cycles and build sustainable life and business. And really importantly is the design component, because we don't want to have anything to have to discard. It's a very tough thing to do in practice, though, just because for so long we've been attuned to just making things and discarding them. It's been 100 years now that we've had this. So it's like, how are we going to get there? And so that's like the $64,000 question. And one thing to mention is, like, what would happen if we went to a zero waste type of lifestyle, sustainable materials management? Well, we see that in terms of the pandemic, and we saw that in the Great Depression. If people don't consume a lot of things, the economy goes in the toilet. So that's a major issue. We're a waste-based economy. And going from waste-based, we're talking about a revolutionary change. And I'll talk later about how revolution can be, accomplished within our system, because it's an economic. Revolutions are all about economy. They're all about the economical aspect of life. They may be pushed by social factors, but it's still all about economy. And whoever owns the means of production is the person or the group that is going to make change. So that's the real key. Who owns the means of production? And people own their trash. That's material. That is wealth. The first, and probably one of the more important principles, is total participation. Everyone is included. We don't need everybody, but we need to include everybody. And it's top down as well as bottom up. It's really an all hands on deck type of an approach, but we want to emphasize teamwork. It's considering not only what's in our home or in our particular business, but what is upstream of home and business and what is downstream of home and business. So we must, if we're going to be a zero waste entity, we must look at upstream, where we buy things, how we source things, and how we request things to be shipped to us and packaged and so forth. And then downstream, how do we handle our materials afterwards? How do we design things so that in the end they can be reconsumed in the system, in a circular system? It's all about constant communications and transparency. So often we have no idea what's in products. It's difficult to get, detailed information. And so consequently, it's very difficult to do any kind of source reduction, or any type of recycling. I say we look to the grassroots, and we look, like I say, for um, a type of cooperativeness, worker cooperatives that actually could own the materials that are generated within our communities, and we can return it back into productive end use. And when I say that everyone is included, but we don't need everybody, think about the 20-60-20 rule of participation. And this is sort of like a bell curve. In other words, like there's 20% on one end and 20% on the other end, and everything is sort of like in a larger part of the curve, the 60%. Well, there's 20% of the people are pro something, 20% are against something, and then everybody else is in the middle. In fact, when the United States was created in 1776, it was a matter of that 20% were revolutionaries and 20% were loyalists. Everybody else said, hey, just get it done with, one way or the other, either with the king or we're something new. So we're approaching those kind of limits right now. So this is a time of change, and that's really important. And you don't need the captains of industry to make the change. It's we, the people, that can make the change. A good total participation example that I like to use is RICO, and they have focused on minimum resource plant and produce maximum effect with minimum resources. RICO Group is always striving to conserve resources in principle, so they're a zero waste company. They promote a strict recycling system and also value electrical energy and water as resources and are constantly striving to minimize use of these resources. To implement this program, all employees participate, everybody from the CEO on down to the stock clerk. And the first act that they did was to remove all trash cans. If we wanted to change how things are done in this country, we would get rid of every single trash can. Holistic thinking. That means the whole is more than a sum of its parts. This is a very important principle. And the key elements of holistic thinking are emulating nature, to look at what nature does and apply that to what we do. It takes more of an integrated approach. How can we do things in a way in which we can piggyback things, do stuff in a way that is going to maximize or optimize opportunities. We take a look at lifestyle impacts. Think about what's going to happen in the future generations. Obviously, we didn't think about that when we started pumping out a lot of plastic. We just thought about the immediate return of reducing energy and reducing carbon and increasing profit, not about what was going to happen to people in the future. The interaction with the real world. If people were thinking about what was going to happen with the plastic, we might have rethought that whole thing and that whole process and application of plastics and perhaps looked at other more sustainable practices. Impacts on health obviously is a major consideration, and we want to try to avoid new problems. The idea is to internalize, not externalize costs, because that's unfortunately what happens in a lot of company. Hey, if we don't have to take care of it inside, we'll let we'll let the cities take care of it. No, cities, even though cities are kind of like held responsible for whatever happens in the jurisdiction, they are not responsible for the waste in the country. That's a fallacy that is pushed on a lot of communities. No, it's got to be upstream and it's got to be those who benefit from it, and that means us as consumers. Those two entities have to solve this issue. There are some good examples of holistic thought. For example, spirulina, called Humanity's Food of the Future in 1974 by the World Bank and United Nations. Spirulina is a green algae. It was used by the ancient Aztecs, and they used to scoop it up off of the Lake Mexico, where Mexico City now occupies, and that is very high in nutrients, much better than oat and wheat and corn and some of those types of staples in terms of protein and other nutrients. And it would be placed in the crops. It would be put into the food, and it's a wonderful food for the future, you might say. There's an Arizona firm that builds houses with blocks made of discarded expanded polystyrene. Silk leaf is the first artificial biological leaf. It's a living architecture that is made from silk and used in a variety of different applications. Some folks have even developed 3D underwater farming and urban vertical gardening, and Fetzer Vineyards uses worms to clean their wastewater. So there's a lot of different things that we can do. I would say take a look at the blue economy. You can Google blue economy and you can find out a lot of good information about holistic thought. Third principle, design for cradle to cradle, not cradle to grave. That's a linear kind of thought. Will McDonough, he's an architect, but he's an advanced architect. His cradle to cradle thesis suggests that industry must preserve and revitalize the ecosystem while producing products and outputs of goods satisfactory for consumers. In other words, we design out wasting, and we do it in two different ways: technical nutrients and biological nutrients. The technical nutrients are things like, metals and such. And so we manufacture, we design, we take these materials, we create things that can easily be disassembled. Consumers can use them, they return them back for repurposing and recycling. Or they are durable and they last for a long time, or they can be repaired. Biological nutrients happens to be something that is important because a lot of the organics in our waste end up in the ground, in landfills, and contribute to human-related GHG, greenhouse gases, which drive, global warming. And so things like plants and soil nutrients and animals and us and food, things like that, ought to be thought of in a sort of a circular nutrient cycle, so that ultimately we ourselves and everything that we deal with organically is ultimately returned to the soil. In terms of the design issues, it's good to think about redesigning for the three R's, but it can be difficult, you know. I mean, if we go back to throwaway ethic and in business, planned obsolescence is now the way of life and generates many jobs focused on wasting. Less than 1% of business today is zero waste, but that's changing, and it's changing, I think, a lot faster than people might imagine. There's a need to build the circular economy within the throwaway economy, though. We just can't like take it and throw it away and then start off with something new. No, it's got to be kind of built in within the framework. I mean, just think with the pandemic, so many businesses are done, are not there. What's happened to the economy? What's happened to jobs? We just lost a lot of jobs, a lot of wealth in the country. And as a consequence, we can see what might happen if we went to a zero waste society today. Something similar like that would happen. We need to plan and develop this stuff. It can't be done overnight. It has to be done over time. These are all designs. So if we're going to design products, we got to design systems and we got to design, pathways and alternatives so that we can create this new narrative. And so that's where we need every single one of you to participate. Fourth, creative rethinking. That's just what I'm talking about, nonlinear, but still critical thinking. We've for so many years now we've operated on a sanitation theory of waste. Just get it out of cities and put it in a hole in the ground, or destroy it so that we don't impact people. Well, there's no way. Okay, it just doesn't really happen. And every time we throw something away, we got to take 70 times its weight to replace it. So it doesn't make any economic sense. It doesn't make sustainability sense, you know. So these are big problems. So we got to redefine our business models, but big problems are just that. They're big opportunities, and I think ecosystems are indeed an inspiration. And to do that, we all must become ecopreneurs in our life and work styles, and not only at business, but at home and at play. Yeah, at work, home, and play. Everything and everywhere that we are, we must rethink how we do stuff. Getting rid of trash cans is a good first step. And so if we can draw from the things that we know from the past, what happened prior to the last 100 years, we can then take that and we can build to the future. And the stuff that we're going to be talking about in our class, I'm going to be very happy to share with you some of the very unique ways that we can not like go back to horse and buggy, but actually build into the future, because that's the real key, building for the future, like what Tesla's done with electrical vehicles. A good example of rethinking is grass clippings. We need to rethink yard waste, which are organic. 80% water, 19% carbon, and slightly less than 1% nitrogen. AB 1826 in California calls for 75% recycling by 2020. We're not even close. Okay, so currently we grow, we mow, and haul to the dump, because this year we can't put it in as alternative daily cover, which means to replace dirt with grass clippings. Now we really got to do something with it, which means mulching or composting. Or how about not growing it in the first place? Do you know that lawns are, and we'll talk about this again, but lawns are the largest cash crop in the United States? Just amazing. But there's a lot of things that we could do. That's what this particular slide is all about. What are our options? We have options out there. And some options, are perfect for some people, some are good for others. Yeah, we can mow, we can collect, we can compost in our own backyard. We could mow and leave it on the ground, grass cycle. We could replace it with fake turf, although I don't agree with that, because most fake turf is plastic. We could use xeriscape, which means that we could put stuff that doesn't need to be mowed, like cactus or things. But if we want to use a ball field or something like that, cactus is not a really good thing to run on, or to, go rolling around in. So we could do some other types of things, that's where the fake turf might come in, or we just grass cycle. But we could also plant food, like at this house here. And what's the best option in your opinion? You all have your own opinion. Write me. Let me know what you think. And which outcome do you think has the best outcome? Food insecurity is a huge problem in this country. And somebody I know had written that if every urban area installed organic gardens in backyards and roofs and places like that, we could take care of the food needs for the entire nation. A fifth issue, or a fifth principle, is eliminate and avoid toxicity. Toxic chemicals are in our body, and there's nothing we can do about it. BPA is found in 9 out of 10 Americans. PFC, polyfluorochlorides, et cetera, are in 99% of pregnant women. Umbilical cord blood from U.S. newborns, 232 toxic chemicals. And we got fertility problems, asthma, Parkinson's disease, all kinds of different things that are really impacting us, and it's just getting worse. So are we going to be a chemical laboratory, or are we going to say enough is enough? And this is where we have an opportunity to work through our legislation by voting, but also voting with our dollars. Avoid toxic products, and don't buy plastics, things of that nature. So there's a lot of stuff that we can do. The examples of some of the issues we have with toxins, that these numbers are indeed alarming. And again, I mentioned before, no synergistic effect studies, and yet we see cancer, autism, allergies, many other diseases and illnesses growing, and by leaps and bounds. Our general medical and scientific community is a study how to turn off the cancer cells, but I look at it and say that's like turning off the fire alarms when they ring rather than searching for the fire. But so many different products, there's no need, for example, to package a lot of stuff in liquids. Toothpaste a lot of times has little pieces of plastic in it. And so we're brushing our teeth, and yet we're installing plastic into our body. Our clothes, we're sloughing off plastics all over, and we're putting it into the wash stream, and we wash our clothes out. It goes to the wastewater treatment plant. They don't collect it in any way. It either goes into the ocean or it goes into sludges, and the sludges are applied to the land where it then dries, and the plastic, the nano and microplastics blow into the atmosphere. So it's everywhere. It's in the ocean, it's in the land, it's on the planet. And it's very difficult. We got to turn off the spigot. A sixth principle is prevention and precaution. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Now, 1700s, Ben Franklin. That's not something that somebody made up lately. You know, people have known this stuff for a long time. And kind of the idea we get here is that a lot of industry folks would say, prove that it's not safe. Well, wait a minute. Prove that it is safe. You know, that's the precautionary principle. So I think that really makes a lot of sense to take that precautionary approach. We cannot wait until there are threats of serious or irreversible damage. And so just because of the fact that we don't have the full knowledge base, if there is an inkling, if there is an issue that we might have some major problem, we really gotta side on the part of what's safe for people on the planet. And we unfortunately haven't taken that approach with a lot of things in our life, our food, our clothes, even things that we do as leisure, and they end up being, you know, really major problems. Um, you know, we're aware of the story of the canaries in the mines. Miners used to carry a canary with them when they went into the mines. If the bird dropped dead, they knew there were toxic gases and everybody skedaddled out of the mine. But we can't wait for that kind of situation for people to start dropping. But that happened with the tobacco industry. We had to wait for basically millions of people to die and for the medical costs to rise into the billions and billions of dollars, you know, before action was taken. And that's not a prevention, nor is it a precautionary type approach. The seventh principle is implementing the three R's. The three R's are reduce, reuse, then recycle. Recycling is the last thing to do. Understand that it's often the first thing people do. So a lot of people, when they get awareness, they go, oh yeah, I can recycle. But recycling is not the end all. It's a treatment option. It's just like burning and landfilling. It's just slightly better because we're still making waste, but it's something that we can do. And it does represent a considerable amount of material. Remember, 290 million tons comes from 20 billion tons. So if we can avoid the 290 million tons and keep that stuff circulating in the system, we should lower the net, you know, impact on the planet. But in order to fully maximize that, we gotta change how we do a lot of things in life. Sort of like an issue that I present to a lot of different companies, and that is how do you monetize conservation? How do you monetize sustainability? How do you monetize waste reduction? These are very serious issues. And for a lot of companies, they can't figure that out. You know, like a garbage company, you know, they still want to pick stuff up. If they're not picking stuff up, how do they make money? Well, there's ways that people can make money by not picking things up. You know, it just, you got to be smart about it. So implementing the three R's is about how we can redesign a lot of things in life. And already some of the infrastructures here, we got plenty of collection, you know, systems, you know, but for recycling, that's disposal, just like landfill and incineration. Recycling should be privy to the same funds that landfill and incineration have. So it shouldn't be any question. And as long as there's this divide between recycling is over here and it's got to pay for itself, and disposal, like landfilling and incineration, don't have to pay for themselves. We got to pay for that. We're not going to get anywhere. You know, recycling's got to have that same level. But we got to do a lot of attention on building redesign and the circular economy. focus on designing out waste, reducing, reusing, returning, and refusing, and then deal with the recycling, compost, biofuel. And if we're going to do any recycling, it's got to be source separation. Separate, separate at the source. No commingling, as in dirty Murphing. That doesn't do any good in terms of educating people. I got facts that show me that when people separate, there is a source reduction dividend because they begin to understand what it is they're buying and what they're wasting. When people just throw everything away and someone's going to take care of it for them, they pay no attention to what they're buying or what they're producing. It just goes, it's out of sight, out of mind. The same old, same old. In terms of 3R industries, there are some new models out there. One is a company called Regulated Waste Solutions. This company was just recently started by a former RRM student. It was same class, and that company, Regulated Waste Solutions, you can go to rws-corp.com and you can take a look at that. They do on-site resource recovery. They sort recyclables, they bale cardboard, they do whole product reuse, they do electronic waste load checks, and they do this for the telecom industry. And they project to be covering 300 sites in California by early this next year. And it's a certified minority business enterprise. So there's all kinds of opportunities. And like I mentioned before, I think another aspect of it, when we talk a little bit more about economics, that's the worker-owned cooperatives. And there's some really exciting things that are happening in that. And so workers can own the means of production, which is revolutionary in and of itself. And we have all this material that's generated 290 million tons, and people are paying to get rid of it. And yet this material has an intrinsic value of about up to $500 a ton. And they're paying hundreds of dollars a ton to get rid of something that has a value of $500 a ton. Doesn't make sense. But people are indoctrinated to think a specific way, and they don't see what are the opportunities out there. Well, I intend to show you these opportunities and these companies like Regulated Waste Solutions that are leading the way today. The eighth principle is continuous improvement. This came out of Japan from ZERI, Zero Emissions Research Initiative. And it originated in Japan based on Kaizen, Japanese for good, Zen, and change, Kaizen. And so good change is really at the core of zero waste principles and programs. The core principle of continuous improvement principle is the self-reflection process that provides from feedback. You don't just do something and just forget about it. No, you got to take a look and see what the impacts are and bring that back into the equation. The purpose of CIP is identification, reduction, and elimination of suboptimal processes. In other words, suboptimal means it's generating some kind of waste, it's creating, a problem. And plastics, for example, in the ocean is suboptimal process. It's not efficient. We're destroying ourselves, we're destroying the ocean to try to save some energy, to transport basically the products and not the packaging. So the economics are kind of screwed up in that respect, but Kaizen would take a look at that and say, how can we eliminate that suboptimal process? Maybe we could take a look at, packaging that is biodegradable, okay, rather than non-biodegradable and not toxic, So the emphasis of CIP is on incremental continuous steps rather than giant leaps. It's more of an evolutionary type approach, and has served the Japanese that have been really push this type of principle and technology to the forefront have really done very well with. Again, incremental it means that we're taking this a step at a time, but it's always moving forward. There's no like, oh, we got the 50% diversion, our our job is done. No, we're going to get to zero waste. And so it's this continual improvement. It doesn't stop. And finally, you got the continuous reevaluation and analysis. That's the costs and benefits. And that's really the revolution, because what the zero waste businesses have found is that they're making more money. Okay. They're doing better than their counterparts that are not doing zero waste. And in fact, if you took the Dow Jones Industrial Average and compare that to the green Dow Jones, the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, those businesses on the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, which practice Kaizen, are have made more money and are doing better for their investors than the companies that are on the typical Dow Jones, where they don't focus on continuous improvement and zero waste. I don't have to give you a whole lot more information, but on the Kaizen, but there are some things that they say are 6 basic Kaizen rules that we can use in our lives. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It's respect others, tell the truth, do our share, try something new, ask why, be safe, think safe. Man, my gosh, I think those things are just good in anything that we do, you know. So it's really about developing a culture where all employees, all citizens, all voters, all people are actively engaged in improving the company, the you might say the entity or the country, the world. And our action plan is organizing events focused on improving specific areas, either within the company or some greater organization. You probably heard this before in some of the other RRM classes, and maybe in RRM4 if you've taken this before. But it's the triple bottom line. It stands, and so often people call it people, planet, and profit. I don't like the word profit because I think it talks about other types of things. Even though the word is profit in this figure, I call it prosperity because I think that's a much better definition for how people relate and how the planet is evolved. Its profit tends to look at less variables, and it doesn't always look at the full life cycle costs. So to get to where we want to be, I think prosperity is a much better term to use for the triple bottom line. It's also called the 3 Ps. But it is a paradigm shift. Paradigm means like a sea change. It's just different. And it takes corporate profitability, prosperity into the realm of the community. That's where the prosperity is really recognized. And it's a recognition that sustainability, which has been closely aligned simply to efficiency and savings, really means corporate commitment to the workplace, to community, to protection of the environment, and to good stewardship. It doesn't help if I'm a business and all my customers are dead or dying. That doesn't make sense. I want I want good stewardship so that my customers are going to want to utilize my services, utilize my products, and make me even more wealthy. And that's the corollary of upstream and downstream actions. You got to be concerned of supplies, and you got to be concerned about end products and what happens to things after the end of life term. The TBL in action, sustainability, one of my favorite products. And Barney Fetzer held a simple philosophy: what's good for the earth is good for the grape, and what's good for the grape is good for the wine. It was true 50 years ago, and it will be still true 50 years from now. Everything we do, how we nurture our land, how we make our wine, reflects a long-standing commitment to minimizing our impact on the environment, because how we care for the earth matters. My gosh, thank you so much, Barney. And you make a good wine, a good beverage, I should say. If you don't drink wine, I mean, all beverages and products should have a very similar and simple philosophy, a more mindful approach. Some of the things that Fetzer does is they use integrated pest management. They don't spray pesticides all over everything. They use different crops that attract certain insects which feed on the pests. So there's a really good way that things are done. Then I mentioned earlier about earthworms are used to process their sewage, and so it really goes to saying that a true integrated system will really look at piggybacking a lot of different processes, and as a consequence, improve sustainability and decrease costs. Finally, there's educate, not incinerate. All right, inform and inspire. The idea of education is that you got to start with awareness. You make people aware of things, and you start to educate them. With education, they can take action. You can't go to action without awareness and awareness building and education. So it's absolutely vital that education be a fundamental principle. And one of the interesting things is that 90% of the learning comes from the doing. In other words, like people have a high retention when they actually use their hands physically. That's why I say that when people separate, they're doing something that they then learn. If they're just throwing it out of sight, out of mind, one can or just throw it and someone's going to take care of something and do the sorting for them, they're not learning. They're really not learning. Yeah, they learn how to take the stuff out to the trash, but it doesn't mean anything. So they have to learn about these things so that when they go to the store, they can buy smarter. And smart purchasing comes from education. And that's the same whether you're a householder that's making purchases or you're a company and you're a procurement director making purchases as well. I like what John Wooden, a late basketball coach for UCLA, used to use to talk about success. It's a peace of mind, a direct result of self-satisfaction and knowing you made the effort to do your best to become the best that you are capable of becoming. And I think as individuals and as a society, we've kind of lost sight of that. And I think it's about time that we begin practicing some of these things. I don't care so much about what grade somebody gets, but if we can think in terms of the pyramid of success, oh my gosh, we're going to have highly trained and educated people that are going to learn how to work together to make success for everyone. And everybody will succeed, and there will be less poverty, and there will be less discrimination, and there will be less of a lot of other isms in society as well. So we must educate and train on a broad community-wide scale. Every resident, every worker, every manager. We must emphasize separation and sorting, not murphing. And we even must use new forms of education and educate by example. Don't just talk the talk, walk the walk. You'd be surprised how many people will respect you and will follow your lead by what you do by example. If you go to the dpw.lacounty.gov, and you can see it there, it's /EPD/rethink/rethink-games-youth.aspx. That's a mouthful. There's games that LA County bought from your professor, and they have that online. And this is to help teach people about, you might say, being introduced to things like rethinking, because it's not just reduce, reuse, recycle, it's also rethinking. And that was a program process that the county of LA adopted based on my suggestions. And the whole design of this particular website is something that I did for the county. And the games are a lot of fun. You're welcome to go play them, although they're old at this point. They're I forget what you call those types of games now, Flash. And a lot of times Flash doesn't work anymore. And I think a lot of folks are discontinuing Flash. So at the end of the year, probably DPW is going to come back and say, our games don't work anymore. So maybe I'll have another project in the future. Any gamesters out there? If you're a gamester, talk to me. Let's figure out how we can help the county do even more. Okay, we've gone through the principles. So those principles are very important, and that quiz on this section is very focused on the principles. So please understand those principles, live them, make them part of your life. That's what I would like you to do. And in fact, in the Zero Waste Solution by Paul Connet, he brings a lot of those particular principles into play. But I want to talk a little bit about lifestyles and work styles. So we're going to the next step, which is how can we incorporate this in our daily lives? Okay, very few of us are waste-free. We all contribute. It's our nature to hunt and gather. That's why the store feels so comfortable with so many shiny objects, because we're hunter-gatherers. And that's exploited by Madison Avenue, coupled with our TV-based psychology of perpetual dissatisfaction. We want to shop. Well, what if you could see everything you threw away in your lifetime, but there was no way? That's what these pictures explain. Just think if you were sitting on that toilet and every single toilet roll that you had ever gone through, you had to sit there and be part of. I mean, it would be thousands of them. Okay, my question is like, why are there any, why are there toilet rolls, cores? Why don't they get rid of them? Well, there are some toilet paper companies that do produce toilet paper core free, or core free toilet paper. And then like all the bottles and boxes and stuff like that, we end up throwing these away or recycling them, and even if we recycle them, it's at great cost. But so often we could change how we deal with stuff. Concentrates, for example, could be used instead of stuff that's just 99% water and 1% mix. And some companies are starting to see this and say, hey, I'm going to get ahead of the curve. I'm going to market my product by doing just that. But we can be good consumers, and we can also look for those types of things. Do a little research online and find out ways that you can get rid of things. Try that in maybe as part of your project that you're going to do. How could you get rid of all those containers, those extra containers, those extra toilet roll cores and such? How about yard waste? A family's lifetime of yard waste. If we happen to, grow our lawns, the American lawn is now the largest single cash crop in the United States by acreage. It would take 528 cubic yards, you know, take about 13 40 cubic yard roll-off bins based on 64 gallons of yard waste per week per family for 50 years. Now, that's a lot of green. And where did it go? Most of the time it just got tossed away at great expense, a lot of energy. Did we have to grow that? No, but we have to grow it because somebody says that our lawns have to be green. Somebody says there's a rule in our community that says everybody must have a lawn. Somebody gives us a green cart that says fill this up, because they're going to charge us money. And if we don't fill it up, it doesn't matter. We're still going to get charged money. That's ridiculous. And there needs to be ways that we can change that narrative. And I did that in City of Diamond Bar. So people, if they don't use a green bin, they actually get a discount, on their trash. That's equivalent to the cost of a green bin. So there are things that we can do, but we don't need to grow that grass. And we talked about ways earlier about how we could change that particular narrative. How about in our homes? Typical home waste sources. if we think of our homes as a production unit for waste, and I tell you this because this is how I see homes. Okay, it's just like the way I see businesses. There's no difference. They're just smaller representations. How we do stuff at home is how we do stuff at work, and vice versa. And if we did take a systemic view of the home as a production unit for waste, we would say our study or home office makes paper, junk mail, and electronic waste, just like the office. Our kitchen makes food waste, packaging, and wastewater, down the sink, just like kitchens and food services. Our garage where we keep cars makes vehicular waste and wastewater, and maybe things like paint, pesticides. Maybe we have a workshop that's in there, but we might have oil and lubricants and tires, just like Pep Boys or some other company that takes care of our cars. Bathroom, we make waste paper, hair, various bodily products, packaging, and lots of wastewater. And that's not too dissimilar from going to a barber shop and you got hair and product shampoos and things like that. There's a lot of similarities there. And in our yards make grass clippings and leaves and brush and wood and even more wastewater. We're feeding our lawns, and that's the craziest thing too, because lawns, we make them dependent upon us. The more they grow, the more water they need, and we got to keep watering them. It's like this is nuts, to keep doing things of that nature. But all around businesses and all through cities, you see green areas and stuff, and maybe a ball field is great to have grass. Well, we'll grass cycle there, or put some fake turf in or something. But for most places, no, you don't need all that grass. You don't need grass around a complex. There's other things that we can do to improve the aesthetics of stuff. And other living areas make waste packaging and cans and newspapers and clothing. And of course, all areas may waste energy and create a whole host of other discarded products. So if we think of our home as sources of waste, we can begin to see a lot of the similarities with business and know that we can do zero waste in a home just like we can do zero waste in a business. Okay, now wasting hurts in the wallet. All right, it costs money to throw things away, and often, there's very little things that we can do if we have like uh, a system in which the more you throw out, it doesn't matter, they'll just pick it up and take it away. But more and more cities, about half the cities in California or more, have pay as you throw. And if you're in a business, you already are familiar with pay as you throw because indeed, the more you throw away, the more you're going to pay. Even if it is a sliding slope in which the more you generate, the lesser you pay per unit, but still you pay more. But I did the work here, so you don't have to go out and do this yourself. But by being frugal, you can make a lot of savings. Be and this before I start that, food discarded by a family in a year. There you go. That's the picture. Okay, take a good look at that picture. That is exactly what the average family in the United States throws away every year. It is absolutely crazy, for that to happen. But there it is. That's what it is. Um, so there's a lot of ways that we can save. Number one, don't throw all that food away. Don't buy in excess. Don't buy just because it's on sale. You're going to have more stuff, you know, and just be a lot more frugal. But food waste costs typical family $640 a year in wasted food. Buying bottled water, $145 a year. Home compost savings, this is stuff that you could do, you know. It's $77, if you can compost, that's the savings that you would have on your trash. Electricity, you we waste so much in terms of electricity. So if we actually, we're very frugal about our energy, we could save up to $1,000 a year. We could cut down our water and save $338. Entertainment, my gosh, we go out and do a lot of things and spend a lot of money, and that's probably a very small amount, comparatively. Public transit alternative, we could save $400 a year. Product alternatives, probably about 1,000, and other things about 500. So in total, about $4,500 a year we could save just by being frugal. The average American household earns $63,784 before taxes, which amounts to bringing home about $51,000. This amount could be stretched by minimalizing your life to what you really need, not want. And so that $4,500 can be very important. My gosh, that's almost 10% of what the household annually earns. So take 51,000 and deduct $4,500, or take 51,000 and save and add $4,500 in savings. Okay, everybody has a choice. Now, what can you do with those savings? Investing just $3,600 of those annual savings in, let's say, an indexed universal life insurance policy at 8% for 7 years, that's $25,200. And in 23 years, that policy will grow to $128,000. Not a bad payoff for conserving as far as I can see. So, like that little less picture at the bottom, grow your money. Okay, there's work style changes too. There's a whole host of things that we can do to promote zero waste at our work. Number one, I've said before, we got to take away the trash cans. Well, we can take away the trash cans at home too. Imagine what people would do. What are they going to do with their trash? Well, I'll tell you, in other countries, nobody comes by and picks up anything. You got to take it someplace yourself. If you want to do recycling in Japan, you got to take it to the local recycling center. Okay. So we're really spoiled in this country that someone will come by and pick up our stuff for pennies, pennies a pound. It's just amazing. But in any event, there are a lot of work style things that we can do. Conducting regular waste audits to identify practices that generate waste. And we do this on a continual basis because we want to continually improve. We need to track results and share that with our workforce. We need to bonus those employees on the basis of wasteless practices they initiate. That's the kind of ideas. I want entrepreneurs, ecopreneurial people working in my business that are helping me focus on things that save money, that will make us money. I take a look at what I was paying on auto insurance a couple of months ago, and shopping around, I was able to save about $60 a month. Man, that's a good amount of money. I like that kind of savings. We can remove the vestiges of wastefulness, such as personal trash cans, at every location, only every floor or in a component of a business where that's under lock and key. You can't put stuff in there unless you get permission to throw it away. that'll bring up a lot of other issues, for folks. But hey, you can recycle for free anytime. Promote awareness about ways to piggyback waste prevention with energy, water, transport, and toxic. A hidden benefit. And a lot of times when people do waste audits, they don't look at energy, they don't look at water, they don't look at transportation, they don't look at toxics, they don't look at electronics, they don't look at a lot of things, and they miss so many savings. And a lot of times when folks come back with results on waste, let's say their waste audits, they say, you can recycle, but it's going to cost you this amount. And then the company's looking at it like, I thought you were going to save me money. Well, it costs money. Yes, indeed, it does cost money, but you're going to save a little bit on your trash bill. But what if you could show them ways that by doing that, they're going to cut their energy costs in half? They're going to cut their water costs in half. They're going to cut other types of costs in half. All of a sudden, everything looks a whole heck of a lot rosier than when you have to come in with something that saves maybe a few pennies. Now, granted, I've gone to a lot of businesses and I've done waste audits and I've saved them hundreds of thousands of dollars, okay? Just because the stuff they were throwing away was not only very valuable, the way they were throwing it away was incredibly wasteful. It just because they believed whatever the hauler told them. Okay, so you got to ask why. So if you're in a business, you got to ask why. Why am I paying for this? Why do I need to do this? Why are we doing it this way? Why don't we try something new? So we got to promote awareness about these ways. Defragment your approaches to resource management. So much is fragmented. You got an energy person, a toxic person, a water person, transport person, recycling person. No, the folks got to talk, and that's even a problem for government because we got so many agencies that are doing so many things, and sometimes they're working at cross purposes. We got to defragment that. And within a business, you got to assemble work teams to address any signs of waste. Just like in the home, you got to assemble the entire family. Everybody's got to participate. You got to review your supplies you purchase for excess packaging. You got to look at ways that you can reduce these types of things or find ways to repurpose things and avoid wasting. Check your own products for excess packaging you send. Nothing worse than you say, we're a zero waste company and you're sending out a whole bunch of like wastefulness to your customers. It's like they're going to look in and say, yeah, they say there's zero waste and they send us a whole bunch of garbage. It doesn't make any sense. We need to encourage regular and frequent group communications. Communications and transparency is very important. So it's not something you do once a year, twice a year, but you got to do it regularly. Sometimes every week. Sometimes you got to have like sort of tailgate type safety meetings type approach, in which people get together for a minute here. We had an instance of wasting yesterday, and what do you think? Okay, don't have to solve it here, but I'm going to leave it right here, and let's all think about how we can get rid of this. Okay, so you just got to kind of open up people to the possibilities. And if anybody can do this, there's a bonus in it for them. If you can get rid of that, there's a bonus for you. Okay. Engage your customers and local community through pervasive and thoughtful messaging and in-kind investment. And RICO, I'll use them again, has done a lot of that. They did a lot of programs in which they planted trees and stuff like that in the community, but they also work with their suppliers as well as with their customers. In fact, they changed their entire business model so that instead of selling, they lease, so they take things back. But it was really important when the president of the company took a look at in their tree planting program, and the president said it wasn't so important that we planted the tree or we got someone to plant a tree, is what we planted in the person's in the child's mind. And that is indeed very, very powerful message. We need to provide regular training and education both within and out of the organization. So nobody is an island. No business is an island. There are impacts. And so we need to create those kind of synergies among a lot of different businesses. In one community I'm working with, I like to create blue ribbon committees of people throughout the community coming together to help put their heads together to solve issues that face the community as a whole. That just makes sense. And it worked in Diamond Bar. It's going to work in Paramount. It's going to work in other communities that I have worked with over the years. Finally, develop entrepreneurship at all levels. People got to be thinking. The only thing that I would say is that if you don't own the business, so often, if you're just an employee, management and ownership takes no note of what people contribute. They're not fair. I just take a look. Disney, said everybody's taking a haircut on their salaries and stuff so we don't have to lay off people. And then 3 months later, they reinstalled all the bonuses and payment for all the senior management and laid off a third of the workforce or 25% of the workforce. To me, that's bunk. No, that's why I say worker-owned cooperatives, I think, is the future model for resource, for the circular economy in this country. We can't depend upon multinational corporations or huge corporations for all this stuff. The real backbone of job development in the nation is really the small business. And that's who's hurt during this pandemic and why so many people are out of work. The big companies still have a lot of people, but there's a lot of small companies that are hurting. So that's where we need to have this entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship, and development of new business models. One of the nice case studies I like to mention is Irvine Unified School District. I was working with them and a hauler to develop a variety of different recycling projects. But one of the nice things was that the district went out to the staff and the teachers to identify ways that they could save energy. In other words, the school district was considering building solar array. You can see in the picture here, there's solar array. It's on parking structures and also on buildings and stuff like that. But before they actually purchased the system, they went out to find ways to save energy. That's an important point. It's called reduce before you produce. Let me repeat that. Reduce before you produce. Always try to reduce before you make an expenditure, a capital expenditure. What they found was by reducing energy, reducing before producing, and they did this by helping people to get rid of their individual refrigerators and coffee makers and a whole host of things, and consolidated and centralized, in sub areas. So they reduced the suboptimal processes, and by doing that, they had immediate savings in operational costs and the capital costs because the energy load went down. They were able to reduce the capital cost, which meant that the money that they had set aside for this capital expenditure could be repurposed into new positions at the school. Let me repeat that part, okay? Or let me explain that part. Schools, just like Santa Monica College, have two budgets. They have facilities budgets and they got teaching budgets. The teaching budget, if you use it, okay. If you don't, you lose it. Use it or lose it. The capital budget, facilities budget, if you don't use it, you don't lose it. You get to repurpose it. And now you can repurpose it to development, build something new that you need, or maybe you put it into new positions like they did at Irvine Unified School District. And I tell you, the teachers union was overjoyed that they were able to reduce overworking and stress by hiring three people that could, go out and at the time, help with the overwork situation because so many schools, we got so many students per instructor, sort of like our class. But in any event, it is important to look at this, and there's a lot of opportunity because I tell you, in California, schools consume $9 billion worth of energy. So I tell you, if they could save money in Irvine, you could save money in the 1,000 school districts across the state of California and put a big dent in that almost $10 billion budget. And that money could go into the instructors that we really need. As a consequence, though, IUSD built the largest solar array in the state of California. A core goal of employee training is to ensure employees are well aware of their responsibility as global citizens and can serve as driving forces of the company's sustainable environmental management or sustainable materials management. And that's what they do at RICO. They're constantly focused on that. And that happens at all times. And they make it fun too. It's not just a matter of like, pointing fingers or making people do stuff. No, they have a party every year. And it's like, events and picnics and anything they find as waste, people can try to transform it into something unique and fun, like mosaics and all kinds of stuff, that people do. And even at their facilities, every facility has a little waste museum. And you go into the waste museum, it's just a room, and they have all the things that they used to do because they kept track of all this stuff. And so people can see point by point, step by step, stage by stage of how they went from wasteful to wasteful less. It's just a really an amazing thing. And then everywhere it's just there's placards and posters and anywhere you go, it's just constantly reminding you, encouraging you, telling you what we're doing, how it's helping the environment, how much money we save, how many bonuses. Here's this person got an award in this section. This person got a bonus in this section. It's just constantly reinforcing the positiveness of resource management. So weekly worker meetings on sustainable practices. They remove the trash containers. Employee bonuses are actually based on waste prevention and recycling. All the money that got saved got put into employee bonuses. That's the way the company can invest in this workforce. All employees, top or down, are participants. So it's total participation. Well, that's all, folks. Well, the thought for today. America's greatest export is its waste. And that to me is a sad fact, folks. Sad fact. And I'd like to see that end. I'm sure you would too. And I think maybe we can get to that point, uh, sooner rather than later, that there's a possibility that we can do that. Maybe not within my lifetime. I'm getting close to my shelf life. But I think for a lot of you, I think you're going to see the wasteless society, and it's going to be an amazing thing to see. Okay, it's coming. It's not a choice. It's inevitable because if we don't do it, the world will do it for us. Okay, it just goes, what what goes around comes around. So it's going to happen. So thank you very much, and remember to take your quiz.